Hey everybody, sorry about the delay in getting the video and the materials posted today. When I got to my office and got ready to get everything going like I normally do, we had no internet, but we're back up and running now. And so thanks for your patience in getting these materials out to you. So we're now turning to taking kind of a big step forward in English history and English literary history in moving into Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And it is similar in some ways because it's a heroic narrative with a central figure like Beowulf, but very different in some ways too. And I'm excited to see how you unpack that in your writing this week. I wanted to walk through a lot of the things that we're going to be going through this week in this video. So sit tight and we'll kind of go through everything you need to know for this week in addition to pointing to the materials that will be the most helpful for you. So first things first, we go to Blackboard, and here is the section that we're for our week this week. Here's the week 5 video that you've already clicked, and I wanted to point to this specific documentary because it is, like the Beowulf documentary, particularly excellent at telling the story of this tale of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and its connection to English culture at that time. So here, if you click it here, but it's not hosted on YouTube, it's hosted in the film series we have access to through AUM. So when you click on this, if you've logged in through my AUM, it should pull up immediately. But if for some reason it doesn't, it may kick you back to that my AUM login page, and then you just log in there. Or if you go back through my AUM and log in there, it should open fine. But it's about an hour long, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time here today to overload you with videos, but it's a really excellent representation. I will tell you that going forward, we don't have near as many documentaries, unfortunately, but I think this one is particularly useful. We want to use the tools that we have available, especially because the narrator and the person that you're going to see in this video is also the translator that we have for the poem we have. So when he's a poet himself, and appreciates the literary aspects of this poem that are so fascinating, and he's going to walk you through all of that particular processes, all of those processes, which are really, really excellent. So take a look at that documentary. I think you'll really like it. So once you do that, I posted here the reading notes for Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And in the beginning of those, I posted a very limited section on things that are happening in this time period in England, and it's wild how much is going on in this time period. So you have what it results in the growth of the middle class, but there's several things going on that people are starting to ask questions about and think about. And every sort of cultural revolution that ever happens is always taking place in the eras that are leading up to it. So it's never just one thing, it's always several things going on. And I've very generally described some of those things here, especially the 100 Years' War and the expenditures that went with that, the bubonic plague, which wiped out so many people and lowered the amount of people in the workforce, which actually gave people more authority to negotiate for better wages, which leads to the peasants' revolts and other things. There's a ton going on, especially that latter category. I want to point to a specific resource that I think would be really helpful. It's a podcast series called The Rest is History, and it's by two historians from England, and they are just excellent at everything they do. I really love this podcast because not only is it historical and these are scholars that are doing it, but it's also just they're both very good at it. But this current series they're on actually is timely, is this section of life that we're in right now. So this peasants' revolt is here, you see, and then these last two, and then we'll move on to the next, the murder of Richard II, and then the Canterbury Tales, which is what we're reading next week. So you can see we're kind of situated well, and they're a great resource for understanding what's going on in the world today in this time that will be really useful for you. So take a look at that resource, or take a listen to that resource, I should say. It's great for a little commute or while you're working out or something, to just hear some of the things that's going on, especially regarding the peasants' revolt, the rise of the middle class, and how these massive changes. And what they seed in there, which I think is particularly interesting, is a lot of the places where they're seeing this growth and people starting to resist against the authorities with them are also the places where the English Reformation of the church really takes foothold. So keep an eye on that. It's fascinating. We'll talk more about it as we move through these texts. But in a world where things are changing so frequently, there's a recognition that we can all kind of look to an idealized past. Remember back when things were like this, and so the literature can reflect that. And one of the ways that we see that literature reflect is in these tales of King Arthur that become popular, and one of them is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Now, you're probably familiar to some degree with Camelot and Arthur and Sir Gawain. Maybe not Sir Gawain, but certainly Arthur and Lancelot and Guinevere and those stories. And it's all built around this idea of honor and chivalry and taking adventures. And what we see in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is this tale of adventure. But both Sir Gawain and the Green Knight are different hero and villain than we've seen before. In Beowulf, they kind of fit into nice, easy categories of good and evil. In Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, those categories are a little bit different. And you see the Green Knight is not particularly a totally evil character, and Sir Gawain is not particularly just completely good all of the time. There's some questions, some nuance in there that I think gives us a fuller description. The text itself is actually pretty easy to read, but I will recommend to you, because it's a little bit longer, that you need to dig in and start soon and really dig into the rhythm of the writing. It's in alliterative verse that you can start to sense, and you can get those sounds going, similar to what we did with Beowulf. And once you dig in, you can find that rhythm taking place. And the translation is really good and really easy to understand, so you shouldn't have a ton of problems with it. But as you dig in, you'll notice that these reading notes kind of follow along with the linear structure of the poem, but you can see some different aspects that we're going to discuss throughout the course of this semester. Keep in mind those terms: honor, loyalty, virtue, chivalry. It's what this entire text is about. So unpack those, dig into those. I want to hear what you have to say, and that leads us to our discussion board post, where you're going to unpack these topics, and I'll come back to the seal method here in a second. So you've got 4 topics to choose from, specifically from Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, really talking about how the text presents virtue, how it's challenged, in what way does Gawain succeed, and what way does he fail, how is his failure perhaps even considered part of his success. And those are areas that Beowulf, for all of its value, just doesn't really contend with. And maybe it does in some ways, and maybe you see some connections that I don't. I'm fascinated to hear from you. As a part of this, I want to continue to point toward this idea of the why, which is, why are we doing this? And I get it's really hard, especially when you're in a school situation, to just kind of do the things. And I'm doing it mainly because my professor told me to. But I wanted you to understand that what we're pointing to here is that we're digging into some advanced topics and things where we want to look at them a little bit more deeply, a little bit more specifically in the ideas of how are we understanding the text and how it works, so that you can make sure that you're understanding that, but also seeing that the definition of honor, the definition of virtue, it changes over time. And though we might point to a core sense of virtue, how it's depicted in these texts might be different. And so looking at those differences and pointing to those helps you really engage with not just the literary text, but an important topic like virtue that we all want and discuss, and that is a part of our culture even today, even if we don't have knights and green knights and all the other things that this text involves. So I think you'll enjoy writing about this concept, because it really digs into those different definitions that we have, different between cultures, different between ideas, and other things. So that's what the discussion topic is. I also sent this to you in an email, but I wanted to point to it really quickly because the seal method is just this extremely helpful. Here, I would download it just so you can use PowerPoint, because it works better, so you can see it. But this is actually developed by one of our professors that used to be here, one of my professors, Dr. Evans, here at AUM. And it's just a really nice way of organizing your information, because sometimes we approach a paragraph and it's like, what do I do with this? I have a quote. Do I start with the quote? Do I close with the quote? What am I supposed to do in all of these places? And oh, here we go. And so this is just a really helpful way to think through that idea. So I'm going to, can I do this? Yes, okay. So the SEAL method is a helpful way to construct paragraph. S is to state your argument so that you are saying exactly what you want that paragraph to do. It is the topic sentence, if you will. Then I is illustrate your point, which is where you bring in evidence to support your claim. And in this case, this would be your quote that you're using to illustrate your point. Then the real work is at the E, or you can see here that I've pointed to how the quote is being used. But then we use the E to explain the connection. And this is from what you might be more familiar with an English 1010 or 1020 paper. You can do the same thing with the literary analysis because the process is still the same. So the E is the explaining of the quote and how it connects to your argument, where you're not just saying this is repeating the same ideas, but this is how the quote illustrates the overall point that I was trying to make, and then linking to the next idea. Now, in a one paragraph assignment, you're really focusing not necessarily on the link, but the S, I, and E of the SEAL method, which is to state your argument, illustrate it with a quote, and explain it. So use that PowerPoint there. I didn't walk through every piece of it because I think you guys can read through that yourselves. But if you have problems with it, or if you have questions about it, feel free to drop me an email and let me know. I'd be happy to help you out and walk through it. But I hope this resource is particularly helpful for you as you do this week's discussion board post. So that's it for this week. I think you're really going to enjoy this text. I think you'll really enjoy. It's certainly in the same family as Beowulf, and so this transition between Beowulf and Sir Gawain is showing the transition of thought and idea from the Old English period to the Middle English period. So let me know if you have any questions. Enjoy the reading, enjoy the writing, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.